If you ever feel out of control around food, you're not alone, and you're in the right place to learn practical, no-nonsense information about why you binge and how to stop. Binge eating does not mean that something is wrong with you. It's a natural but primitive brain response that you can correct. If you're ready for change, sign up for the Brain Over Binge self-paced online course for less than $20 per month. And if you feel you need personalized support, we also offer one-on-one coaching and group coaching. To learn more, go to brainoverbinge.com/subscribe. And I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the Brain Over Binge podcast, where you learn a simple, brain-based approach to ending binge eating. I'm Kathryn Hansen. I'm the author of Brain Over Binge and the Brain Over Binge Recovery Guide. And I'm very excited to announce that I will have a second edition of Brain Over Binge available next month, which is April 2022. So for those of you listening to this episode well after it's released, the book may already be available. I'll let you know here on the podcast when you can get the book, but another great way to stay updated is to follow me on Instagram at brain_over_binge. And I also put that in the show description. I share a lot of useful content there on Instagram to help you along your path to freedom from binge eating. I apologize if my audio quality doesn't quite sound the same. I had some microphone issues and I'm just doing my best to get this episode out to you. Today, our awesome Brain Over Binge coach, Julie, is back for another episode. Each month, she's been here on the show to share key ideas from a lesson that she's also taught in detail in Brain Over Binge group coaching. Today's discussion will explain the concept of compound stress and how that relates to binge eating recovery. And we hope that what we talk about provides you with practical ideas and insights that can help you get through challenging times. Hi, Julie. So glad you're here.
Hi, Kathryn. I'm really happy to be with you today.
Yeah, for sure. Our topic, I feel like, is going to be really timely. We're recording this episode on March 13th, 2022, and there's just so much suffering happening right now, and it's creating so much stress on many different levels for different people in the world. And we want to talk about that today, and we want to talk about something called compound stress. And maybe, Julie, you can just dive into what our topic will be today.
Sure. And I'm really happy to do it right now. So, Kathryn, it's this notion of compounding. So compounding is a great tool for saving money. It's wonderful to have interest compound over time. That's something we really want. However, the same is true for stress. Every little stressor adds up. And our bodies are built in a certain way from back to when we were cave people. You know, as cave people, we would have stress in our system and it was, run from the predator or be killed. And so it was a useful thing to have these stress hormones coming into our body because they gave us the adrenaline and the cortisol to take off from the predator. But today, we're not being chased generally by lions and tigers and bears. Right now, often the stress that we're experiencing is an email from the boss or a phone call from our mother-in-law or an email that we haven't returned. And that's not over a week or a month, but that can happen all before noon or all before 3:00 in the afternoon. So all of that cortisol and adrenaline is building and building in our system. And we'll add to that, obsessively watching the news and looking at what's going on and not knowing exactly how to manage. All of that's creating this stress response in our system, and it's building and building and building. And each incident is opening up a stress cycle in the body. So each thing that happens, our body is being flooded with the cortisol and adrenaline. And it can take up to 15 minutes for those chemicals to leave our system once we feel safe. But if it's building all day long and we're never showing our body and our brain that we are safe, then it's almost as if our body believes that we're being chased by a lion and a tiger and a cheetah all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it can seem like it's one thing after another. And I want to turn this toward talking about people who are trying to recover, who are trying to end the binge eating habit, because that creates another level of stress that compounds, every day and over time. So can you talk about how binging then adds more to that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, such a great point. What often happens is that stress is building in our system and there's no release valve. And so people get home at the end of a day and they decide to binge to get some quote unquote relief, which does exactly the opposite of giving them any relief almost instantaneously. Like once the binge is starting, generally that's followed by feelings of panic and anxiety and dread over, oh my God, what did I just do? I can't believe this is happening. And then added to whatever was going on during the day is, how am I going to fix this? It makes the stress even more. Not to mention losing sleep because you're so physically uncomfortable, waking up the next day with a whole host of negative consequences in the body. And then it's the brain being occupied with how to fix it. And then the cycle continues and continues. And so there's stress just building and building and building in every way.
Yeah, totally. And as you and I know, when you remove the binge eating from your life, you release so much of that stress. Now you still have whatever stress in your life you're dealing with, your problems, your family, work, world events, that is all still there, but you remove a huge source of stress. So I just want to encourage everyone that this is a way that you can start to get relief from some of your stress right now by working on ending this habit. Now, that also brings me to the point of it may feel very overwhelming to work on ending this habit while you have all this stress going on and while there's so much going on in the world. You may feel like, how can I tackle it all at once? And Julie, I'd like to talk about that because when you are so stressed, it can kind of weaken those self-control functions in your higher brain. It does not mean you're not capable of recovering, but when you're in that fight or flight state, when you're feeling so anxious, it is harder to connect with your higher brain, which as I talk about, that's the part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex that allows you to then dismiss your binge urges. So how can we deal with the feelings of stress and still connect to our higher brain to overcome this habit?
One of the things that I love to show to my clients, and I do it with two hands, so everyone's going to have to imagine that they can see my hands. But when you're in a stress cycle, your amygdala is firing. So imagine that, you have that it's almost like a light switch. So you're in a stress cycle and your amygdala is on. And you're absolutely right, Kathryn. When your amygdala is firing, you actually don't have access to your prefrontal cortex. That's why when people fly into a rage, they say things they would never say. Their hands start to shake. They can't think straight. Again, you're running from a lion. So you're not thinking about rational thought in those moments. You're thinking about saving yourself. And so it's really, really important. In mindfulness communities, we talk about this being you've gone offline. So when your amygdala is firing, you're offline. And the way to bring your prefrontal cortex back online is to take some slow, deep breaths, calming your nervous system down. It's really important to notice in the moment, oh, I'm really activated right now. My hands are shaking. I'm breathing funny. My stomach is tight. My throat is tight. Whatever it might be. And you breathe slowly and deeply, much longer exhales than the inhale, just calming down your nervous system. Really important. That wakes up the prefrontal cortex and helps the amygdala slow down.
Yeah, and I think it's something that you can do in a short period of time. I think when people think, oh, I have to get rid of all my stress, they think they need to do things that take a long time, like meditate or go for a long walk. And we sometimes just don't have time for that in the course of our day. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to also raise the fact that like a lot of times people refer to stress management as taking care of the email or the demand from your boss or filing the papers or meeting whatever your kid's need is in the moment. And all of that is great. Like it is important to take care of all of those things. But if you don't do anything to manage the cortisol and adrenaline that's been building in your system all day long, then your body is still flooded with all of those chemicals. So you can do all the strategies, you can take everything off your list, and you're still going to be frustrated and irritable and at the end of your rope. And why is that? Because your body is still flooded with those chemicals that have been compounding all day long. And that's why, as you mentioned, just taking regular, short 1-minute breathing breaks where you notice throughout the day, okay, I'm a little stressed out. I'm just going to take 3 slow, deep breaths. Even setting an alarm on your phone to breathe every hour. Or, every time you go into the bathroom, you're going to take some slow, deep breaths while you're at work. Whatever you can do to regularly check in with yourself and give yourself a little chance to calm down.
Yeah, that's super helpful, I think, especially now with everything going on, just to realize that you can't function in a state of that constant stress. And when you're also trying to recover, trying to break a habit, it just helps to keep your body in that state where you are feeling connected to who you want to be and the choices you want to make, because ultimately making those choices that are in line with your values and what you truly want, that is going to ultimately reduce your stress.
Totally. It's also recognizing, hopefully now after listening, that it's not enough to take care of whatever's on your list. You've got to acknowledge to your body that you are safe, letting your body know that you're safe. And again, just by calming down your nervous system. So it's a both and. It's about doing both.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to mention is that we're not saying that the stress is going to go away. Like, you are going to still have things to deal with. And there are things that we should be upset about. One look at the news, there's so much suffering going on. And yeah, we're just not saying that you have to take that all away. It's just taking care of yourself, making sure that you're not constantly operating in that state of high cortisol so that you can continue down the path of recovery and release this habit.
Absolutely. And constantly remembering that turning to food is only and always going to make everything worse, unless, of course, it's for an adequate meal, right? And so in those moments when you're feeling upset or anxious, it's honoring your feelings, taking care of yourself in whatever way is available to you at the time, and grounding yourself in this awareness that by eating adequately and allowing urges to move through you, you're giving yourself a better chance, not only at recovery, but at managing the stressors that come up as a part of the gift of being alive.
Yeah, because the gift of being alive includes the good and the bad. And you never have to have everything be good in order to stop a habit. It will never be. So accepting that and knowing that you can make your way through it, I think, is so powerful. One thing that came up for me as you were talking about eating adequately was that stress has a different effect on people's appetite. So, you may be someone who, when you're stressed, you actually don't feel like eating, and then you sort of unconsciously restrict, or you may be someone who during stress, you do have more cravings. So that's a little bit different topic than we've been talking about. But, how do you see that come up with people in the group as far as stress affecting appetite?
That's a great question. And as you just said, I think it can go either way. I mean, I think that when people are in certain degrees of stress, their appetite stops, because again, when you're in fight, flight, freeze mode, digestion stops, you're running from a lion. But it's also about recognizing that once you've let your body notice that you're safe, that you go right back to eating adequately. The other piece of it, of course, is that restricting is a stressor. So in restricting, in not eating, in not meeting your body's absolute needs for fuel, you're putting your body into even more stress. Added to that, the regularity of consistent, adequate meals as a non-negotiable is going to give you a much calmer nervous system.
Yeah, that's really insightful. And I think it all comes down to awareness and knowing how stress affects your own unique body, knowing how it affects your own appetite, and being aware that if you are someone who, when you're under a lot of stress, you don't feel like eating, well, it's important that you do. And it's important that you recognize that even if maybe your appetite's down because you're constantly in this high state of cortisol, you still need to plan your adequate meals, eat enough food, nourish your body, because by restricting, you're sending yourself into that, survival state, adding more stress. So yeah, this is super helpful as far as viewing both goals in recovery. Helping yourself manage stress will allow you to access that higher brain so that you're able to dismiss urges. It will also help you access the higher brain so you're able to guide your eating and eat adequately and nourish yourself. So what other sort of quick stress reduction strategies can help with this?
So in addition to taking breathing breaks throughout the day, and again, with the breathing breaks, it's really important to make your exhales longer than your inhales, because that is how we get into a more rest and digest mode versus fight or flight. But in addition to that, some other easy things that people can do. This is going to sound funny, but jumping up and down and shaking out your hands, doing some jumping jacks, taking a vigorous walk around the building, and not a long one. I'm just talking about like a minute or two, but just like moving quickly. All of that is going to help get the stress, get the cortisol and adrenaline to leave the system. Other things that work are, journaling, like getting down your thoughts. I'm feeling really stressed. All of this stuff is going on. Just writing it all down. Connection, getting a hug. That is a great way to calm your nervous system down if that's available to you. Petting a dog, petting a cat, looking at a landscape, even a picture of a landscape will work. If it's something that means something to you, prayer, spirituality, connecting to the divine, all of these things are great ways to take yourself out of that stress cycle and get your prefrontal cortex back online.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And then I think beyond that, you can look at it in a more long-term way. And what support do you need and how can you adjust and make changes in your life? You do an amazing job in the group of just being there for people, when they are in that state. So can you talk about how you help people in the group learn to manage their stress?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a topic that comes up all the time in the group. And it's an area where people need a lot of reminders because we live in a culture where when you ask somebody a question, how are you doing? I'm really stressed. I'm so busy. Like it's just the norm, almost something that people wear with a badge of honor. That can't be the norm anymore. Attending to stress as it's coming on through the day, giving yourself moments of pause is a way of honoring yourself. And it's so important. And that's one of the things that I remind group members of all the time. Also, being in a community when you're trying to recover is another way to help attend to that stress. Because instead of feeling like you're alone and you're doing this shameful thing and what's wrong with you, you come into community and you see, oh, I'm not alone at all. And I'm just learning a new skill and it takes time and it's messy. And I can get all the help I need as I'm doing it. And there are people who are supporting me and cheering me on, as well as new ideas that I'm learning. So I often like to say we are healed in community, and that healing helps to deal with the stress.
Yeah, I totally agree. The group is an amazing option for that connection and for just being with people who understand and who are going to support you. And Julie really takes it to another level. Like, of course, there's ending the binge eating habit, but then she also has so many amazing mindfulness strategies and just ways you can learn to manage your life better because she is a life coach as well.
And Kathryn, I just think this is such a timely topic. And I really hope what we've talked about today is useful for people in that they have at least one little thing that they can start bringing into their lives to start shifting that stress response so that it's not building all the time.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And thank you so much, Julie, for sharing and for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Kathryn.
If you want to get that support from Coach Julie and the wonderful members of the Brain Over Binge group, you can go to brainoverbinge.com/group to join anytime. It's always open to new members, so you don't have to wait to receive help. You can start getting coaching on the group's forum today, and you can join group coaching calls every week. Plus, all group members get access to the Brain Over Binge course, which you can start using right away. If you'd prefer one-on-one coaching with Julie, you can learn about that at brainoverbinge.com/1-on-1-coaching. And I've included these links in the show description as well. Thank you so much for listening today. I look forward to talking to you again next time. As I wrap up, I want to encourage you and remind you that you have the power to change your brain and live a binge-free life. The Brain Over Binge podcast is produced and recorded by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC. All work is copyrighted by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC, and all rights are reserved. As a disclaimer, the hosts of the Brain Over Binge podcast are not professional counselors or licensed healthcare providers, and this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice or any form of professional therapy. Eating disorders can have serious health consequences, and you are strongly advised to seek medical attention for matters relating to your health. Please get help when you need it, and good luck on your journey. Need more help? You can find all of our current and upcoming options for support at brainoverbinge.com.